Paraphrased, unbeknownst to them, I had been expecting this since I received a stray email thread in my inbox a month ago. Original. We'd like you to clean out your desk by Friday, Marjorie continued, gaining confidence from my apparent acceptance. Paraphrased. Marjorie, emboldened by my calm reaction, went on, we need you to clear your desk by Friday. Original. We'll need your key card, company laptop, and phone before you leave. Paraphrased. Before you depart, you must return your key card, your company laptop, and your phone. Original. Your team will be notified this afternoon. Paraphrased. Your team will receive the notification later today. Original. My team. 6 brilliant engineers I had personally recruited and mentored over the years. Paraphrased. My team, those 6 gifted engineers whom I had personally hired and guided for years. Original. The same team that had helped me develop the distributed processing algorithm that now powered TechVantage's flagship product, accounts fair accounting software used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. Paraphrased, this was the same team that had assisted me in creating the distributed processing algorithm, which served as the foundation for TechVantage's main product, accounts fair accounting software, utilized by more than 40% of Fortune 500 businesses. Original, of course, I said, rising from my chair. Paraphrased, I stood up and said, certainly. Original, is there anything else? Paraphrased, do you need anything further? Original, they exchanged glances, clearly thrown by my composure. Paraphrased, they exchanged a bewildered look, taken aback by my calmness. Original, Marjorie recovered first. That's all for now. Thank you for making this professional. Paraphrased, Marjorie was the first to regain her composure, saying, that will be all for now. We appreciate you handling this with professionalism. Original, as I walked back to my office, I passed the glass-walled conference room where the executive team was meeting. Paraphrased, on my way to my office, I walked by the conference room with glass walls where I could see the executive team was in a meeting. Original, through the transparent barrier, I could see CEO Victor Lawson gesturing animatedly at a PowerPoint presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. Paraphrased, through the clear walls, I watched CEO Victor Lawson gesticulating energetically at a PowerPoint slide with the title Q3 Revenue Projections. Original, the same Victor Lawson who had taken credit for my algorithm at last year's industry conference, referring to me only as one of our research team members. Paraphrased, this was the very same Victor Lawson who had claimed my algorithm as his own at the previous year's industry conference, mentioning me only as a member of our research team. Original, I closed my office door and pulled out my personal phone, sending a single text message. Paraphrased, I shut my office door, took out my own phone, and sent a one-line text. Original, it's happening. Friday is my last day. Paraphrased, it's official. My final day is Friday. Original, the response came immediately. Paraphrased, the reply was instant. Original, perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details. Paraphrased, flawless timing. The contracts are prepared. Let's meet for dinner tonight to finalize the specifics. Original, I smiled as I looked at the calendar on my desk. Paraphrased, I glanced at the calendar on my desk and smiled. Original, today was Wednesday. Friday, I would leave TechVantage for the last time. Paraphrased, it was Wednesday today. On Friday, I would be walking out of TechVantage forever. Original, and Monday. Monday would be fascinating. Paraphrased, and Monday. That was going to be an interesting day. Original, that evening, I met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, an upscale restaurant far from TechVantage's headquarters. Paraphrased, later that night, I met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, an elegant restaurant located a good distance from TechVantage's main office. Original, as the CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's largest competitor, Greg knew the value of discretion. Paraphrased, since he was the CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's primary rival, Greg understood the importance of being discreet. Original, He'd reserved a private dining alcove in the back, shielded from curious eyes by elegant Japanese screens. Paraphrased, he had reserved a secluded dining area in the rear, which was protected from prying eyes by beautiful Japanese screens. Original. They actually did it, Greg said, shaking his head after we ordered. I suspected they might, but to cut the very person who developed their core technology, single quotes paraphrased, after we'd placed our orders. Greg shook his head and said, I can't believe they actually went through with it. I thought they might, but... To dismiss the person who created their fundamental technology, single quotes original. Victor never understood what I actually created, I replied, sipping my water. Paraphrased, Victor never truly grasped the essence of what I built, I commented while taking a sip of water. Original. He saw the implementation, the user interface, the marketing potential, but the underlying architecture, that was just tech stuff to him. Paraphrased, he only ever saw the final product, the user's interface, and its marketing potential, but the core foundation, that was just technical details to him. Original. The irony was almost too perfect. Paraphrased. The situation was rich with a sense of perfect irony. Original. 3 months ago, I discovered the patent application for my distributed processing algorithm had never been filed by TechVantage's legal team. Paraphrased, it had been 3 months since I found out that TechVantage's legal department had never submitted the patent application for my distributed processing algorithm. Original. An oversight, they claimed when I inquired. Paraphrased. When I asked about it, they called it a mistake. Original. They had assured me they'd handle it immediately, but something about their response had seemed off, prompting me to check the company's internal documentation. Paraphrased, they quickly promised to take care of it, but their reaction felt suspicious, which led me to review the company's internal records. Original. That's when I found it. A strategy memo outlining plans to claim the algorithm as company developed. Technology without specific inventor attribution. Paraphrased, it was then that I discovered a strategy memo detailing a plan to label the algorithm as company property without acknowledging me as the specific inventor. Original. They'd planned to push me out before securing the patent, knowing intellectual property developed by employees typically belong to the company. Paraphrased, they intended to force me out before the patent was granted, since they knew that intellectual property created by employees usually belonged to the company. Original. What TechVantage didn't know was that I'd already been working on refinements to the algorithm on my own time, using my personal equipment. Paraphrased, TechVantage was unaware that I had already been making improvements to the algorithm in my own time, using my own gear. Original. Those improvements, which dramatically increased processing efficiency by 43%, weren't covered by my employment agreement. Paraphrased, my employment contract did not cover these enhancements, which had boosted the processing efficiency by an impressive 43%. Original. I'd quietly filed for a patent under my own name last month, fully documented with timestamps and development logs that clearly showed the work was completed outside of company time. Paraphrased, last month, I had quietly submitted a patent application in my own name, complete with detailed timestamps and development logs that clearly proved the work was done outside of company hours. Original. The patent had been granted with remarkable speed, thanks to Greg's introduction to a top-tier IP attorney. Paraphrased, the patent was approved exceptionally fast, thanks to Greg connecting me with a high-caliber intellectual property lawyer. Original. All the paperwork is finalized, Greg said now, sliding a folder across the table. Paraphrased, Greg slid a folder across the table, saying, the documentation is all complete. Original. As soon as you sign, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. Paraphrased, the moment you sign, Precision Systems will officially own the sole licensing rights to your patent. Original. The press release goes out Monday morning, announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. Paraphrased, the press release will be distributed Monday morning, naming you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. Original. I reviewed the documents carefully, though I'd already memorized the key terms. Paraphrased, I read through the papers thoroughly, even though I had already committed the essential terms to memory. Original, a 7-figure signing bonus, substantial equity in Precision Systems, and ongoing royalties from all products using my algorithm. Paraphrased, it included a signing bonus of 7 figures, a significant stake in Precision Systems, and continuous royalties from any product that utilized my algorithm. Original. What do you think Victor's face will look like when he realizes what's happened? Greg asked, unable to hide his satisfaction at the prospect. Paraphrased, unable to contain his delight, Greg asked, how do you think Victor will react when he finds out? Original, I'm more concerned about my team, I admitted. They don't deserve to be caught in the fallout. Paraphrased, I confessed, I'm more worried about my team. They shouldn't have to deal with the consequences of this. Original, Greg nodded. Already addressed, we have positions for all 6 of them if they're interested. Senior roles with significant raises. Paraphrased, Greg nodded. That's already handled. We have jobs for all 6 of them if they want them. Senior positions with substantial salary increases. Original, I signed the final page and closed the folder. Paraphrased, after signing the last page, I shut the folder. Original, in one elegant move, I had secured my future, protected my team, and positioned my work for new beginnings. Paraphrased, with a single graceful action, I had guaranteed my future, safeguarded my team, and set my work up for a fresh start. Original, to new beginnings, Greg said, raising his glass. Paraphrased, Greg raised his glass and said, to new beginnings. Original, and to owning your own value, I added, clinking my glass against his. Paraphrased, as I touched my glass to his, I said, and to recognizing your own worth. Original, Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of exit interviews, knowledge transfer meetings, and saying goodbye to colleagues. Paraphrased, Thursday and Friday went by quickly, filled with exit interviews, meetings to hand off information, and goodbyes to co-workers. Original, I maintained my professional composure throughout even as rumors spread across the company. Paraphrased, I stayed calm and professional the entire time, even as gossip circulated through the company. Original, administrative assistants gave me sympathetic glances in the hallways. Paraphrased, office assistants in the halls would give me sympathetic looks. Original, junior developers approached awkwardly, asking if I'd provide LinkedIn recommendations before I left. Paraphrased, younger developers approached me with hesitation, asking if I would write them a recommendation on LinkedIn before my departure. Original, I documented everything meticulously, every project, every password, every process. Paraphrased, I was very thorough in documenting every detail, each project, password, and process. Original, knowing full well that TechVantage would soon discover just how thorough they needed me to be. Paraphrased, I did this knowing that TechVantage would soon realize just how much they needed my comprehensive records. Original, my decision to leave comprehensive transition notes wasn't kindness. It was evidence. Paraphrased, I wasn't being kind by leaving detailed transition notes. I was creating evidence. Original, evidence that I had acted in good faith, while the company had not. Paraphrased, this was proof that I had acted honestly, but the company had not. Original, during my final exit interview on Friday afternoon, Denise from HR went through the standard checklist with mechanical efficiency. Paraphrased, in my last exit interview on Friday afternoon, Denise from HR checked off the standard items with a robotic efficiency. Original, you understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of TechVantage? She stated, pushing a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Paraphrased, she declared, as she slid a non-disclosure agreement across the table. You do know that any intellectual property you created while employed here still belongs to TechVantage. Original, of course, I replied pleasantly. Anything developed within the scope of my employment, using company resources, during company time. Paraphrased, I answered genially, naturally, anything that was created as part of my job, using the company's resources, during my work hours. Original, I emphasized those qualifiers slightly, but Denise was too busy checking boxes to notice. Paraphrased, I put a slight emphasis on those specific words, but Denise was too focused on her checklist to pay attention. Original. And you affirm you have no copies of proprietary company information. Paraphrased, and you confirm that you do not have any copies of our confidential company information. Original. I have taken nothing that belongs to TechVantage. I confirmed truthfully. Paraphrased. I truthfully asserted I have not taken anything that is the property of TechVantage. Original. The patent was mine, after all. Paraphrased. The patent, of course, was mine. Original. As I packed the personal items from my desk, family photos, a collection of conference badges marking 15 years of industry events, the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas, Marjorie stopped by, leaning against my door frame with artificial casualness. Paraphrased. Well, I packed up my personal belongings from my desk, my family's pictures, a set of conference badges from 15 years in the industry, and the coffee mug my team had given me the previous Christmas. Marjorie came by and leaned against my office door with a forced casualness. Original. I just wanted to check that everything's clear for your departure, she said, watching me place items into a cardboard box. Paraphrased. I just wanted to make sure everything is in order for your departure, she said as she watched me put things in a box. Original. Crystal clear, I replied, wrapping a small award I'd received for the very algorithm now at the center of my plans. Paraphrased. I replied, perfectly clear, as I wrapped a small award I had won for the very algorithm that was central to my plans. Original. The irony wasn't lost on me as I carefully placed it between layers of tissue paper. Paraphrased. I found the irony amusing as I gently put the award between sheets of tissue paper. Original. You know, Kira, these restructuring decisions are never personal, Marjorie continued. Victor feels the company needs to move in a more youthful direction. Paraphrased, Marjorie went on, you know, Kira, these restructuring decisions are not personal. Victor believes the company needs to focus on a younger direction. Original. I looked up, meeting her gaze directly. I understand completely. Business is business. Paraphrased. I met her eyes directly and said, I fully understand. It's just business. Original. Something in my tone made her pause for a brief moment. Uncertainty flickered across her face, but she quickly dismissed it. Paraphrased. My tone made her hesitate for an instant. A flicker of doubt appeared on her face, but she quickly ignored it. Original. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly do? Paraphrased. She probably thought, what could an about-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman do anyway? Original. Will you be taking some time off? She asked, an artificial note of concern in her voice. Paraphrased. She asked with a fake tone of concern, are you going to take some time off? Original. Actually, I already have something lined up, I replied. I start Monday. Paraphrased. I answered, actually, I already have another job. I start on Monday. Original. Oh, surprise crossed her features. That's fast. Anything interesting? Paraphrased. A surprised expression crossed her face. Oh, that was quick. Is it anything exciting? Original. I smiled. Very. A leadership position. I'm quite excited about it. Paraphrased. I smiled. Very. It's a leadership role and I'm very much looking forward to it. Original. She nodded absently, already mentally moving on to other matters. Paraphrased. She nodded distractedly, her mind already shifting to other thoughts. Original. Well, good luck with that. Paraphrased. All right then, best of luck. Original. As I walked out of TechVantage's glass headquarters for the final time, key cards surrendered and personal belongings in tow, I took a moment to look back at the building where I'd spent 15 years of my career. Paraphrased. As I exited the glass-walled TechVantage building for the very last time, having turned in my keycard and with my personal items with me, I paused to look back at the place where I had spent 15 years of my professional life. Original. On the top floor, I could see the executive conference room lit up for an evening meeting. likely discussing how to redistribute my responsibilities among younger, less experienced, and significantly less expensive staff. Paraphrased, I saw the executive conference room on the top floor lit up for a night meeting, probably to discuss how my duties would be divided among younger, less seasoned, and much cheaper employees. Original, little did they know that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be hosting an emergency crisis meeting instead. Paraphrased, they had no idea that in just 3 days, that very room would be the location of an emergency crisis meeting. Original, Monday morning dawned bright and clear. Paraphrased, Monday started with a bright, sunny sky. Original, I dressed carefully in my new charcoal suit, a power outfit I purchased specifically for this day. Paraphrased, I put on my new charcoal suit, a powerful outfit I had bought just for this occasion. Original, the Precision Systems town car arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. to take me to their headquarters, where I'd start my first day as Chief Innovation Officer. Paraphrased, a town car from Precision Systems arrived exactly at 7:30 a.m. to take me to their main office, where my first day as Chief Innovation Officer would begin. Original, the press release went live at 7 a.m., Greg informed me as I settled into my new corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Paraphrased, as I got comfortable in my new corner office, which had floor-to-ceiling windows, Greg told me the press release was published at 7 a.m. Original. Industry newsletters are already picking it up. I've got the communications team monitoring reactions. Paraphrased, newsletters in the industry are already covering it. My communications team is tracking the responses. Original, the announcement had been crafted with strategic precision. Paraphrased, the announcement was written with careful strategy. Original, Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary processing algorithm, welcomes creator Dr. Kira Jennings as Chief Innovation Officer. Paraphrased, Precision Systems obtains exclusive rights to groundbreaking processing algorithm, welcomes its creator, Dr. Kira Jennings, as Chief Innovation Officer. Original, it detailed my background, emphasized my role as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and outlined how Precision Systems would be integrating the algorithm into their next generation of products. Paraphrased, the announcement provided details about my professional history, highlighted my position as the only inventor of the patented technology, and explained how Precision Systems would be incorporating the algorithm into their upcoming products. Original. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using the technology would need to negotiate licensing agreements with Precision Systems moving forward. Paraphrased, crucially, it explicitly said that from now on, any company using the technology would need to arrange licensing deals with Precision Systems. Original. At precisely 9:15 a.m., my phone lit up with the first text from my former team at TechVantage. Paraphrased, my phone screen lit up at exactly 9:15 a.m. with the first text message from my old team at TechVantage. Original. Complete chaos here. What did you do? Paraphrased, it's total chaos over here. What have you done? Original. It was from Miguel, my lead developer. Paraphrased, the message was from Miguel, who had been my lead developer. Original. I smiled, typing back, check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers waiting. Paraphrased, I smiled and typed back, look at your personal email. All 6 of you have job offers. Original. Meanwhile, 8 miles away at TechVantage headquarters, the scheduled Monday morning executive meeting was undergoing a dramatic transformation. Paraphrased, at the same time, 8 miles away at TechVantage's main office, the regular Monday morning executive meeting was changing drastically. Original. According to Miguel's play-by-play updates throughout the morning, Victor had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting at his door, both ashen-faced. Paraphrased, Miguel's messages throughout the morning described how Victor got to the office to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting for him, both looking pale and shocked. Original. The industry announcement had hit their inboxes simultaneously, setting off immediate alarms. Paraphrased, the industry announcement had landed in their inboxes at the same time, causing immediate alarm. Original. By 9:30 a.m., what should have been a routine start-of-week meeting had morphed into an emergency crisis session. Paraphrased. By 9:30 a.m., what was supposed to be a normal meeting to start the week had become an urgent crisis session. Original. Board members were calling in remotely. The legal team was frantically reviewing my employment contract and the documentation around the algorithm's development. Paraphrased. Board members were joining the meeting by phone, and the legal team was frantically going over my employment contract and the paperwork for the algorithm's creation. Original. They're pulling every file with your name on it, Miguel reported. Someone just wheeled in all the servers from the research division for the tech team to analyze. Paraphrased, Miguel messaged, they're looking at every file that has your name on it. They just brought in all the servers from the research department for the tech team to examine. Original. I could picture the scene perfectly. Victor pacing the conference room, demanding explanations from Marjorie and the legal department. Paraphrased, I could easily imagine the scene. Victor walking back and forth in the conference room, demanding answers from Marjorie and the legal team. Original. The stock would already be responding to the news. Investors hated uncertainty, and the announcement had created plenty of it. Paraphrased, the company's stock was likely already reacting to the news. Investors dislike uncertainty, and this announcement had created a great deal of it. Original. At 10:45 a.m., I received an email from Victor himself, the desperation practically emanating from my screen. Paraphrased, at 10:45 a.m., I got an email from Victor, and I could practically feel his desperation through my screen. Original. Kira, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss. Paraphrased, Kira, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. Please contact me as soon as possible so we can talk. Original. I forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team without responding. Paraphrased, without replying. I simply forwarded the email to the legal department at Precision Systems. Original. By noon, the industry was buzzing with speculation. Paraphrased, by midday, the industry was abuzz with rumors. Original. TechVantage's stock had dropped 7% since the market opened, while Precision Systems had seen a 12% increase. Paraphrased, TechVantage's stock price had fallen 7% since the start of the day's trading, while Precision Systems had gone up by 12%. Original. 3 different technology journals had requested interviews with me about this strategic coup that had shaken the accounting software industry. Paraphrased, 3 different tech magazines had asked to interview me about this strategic maneuver that had rocked the accounting software sector. Original. How are you feeling? Greg asked, stopping by my office as I settled in. Paraphrased, Greg stopped by my office as I was getting settled and asked, how are you feeling? Original. Validated. I replied honestly. Paraphrased, I answered truthfully. I feel validated. Original. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, of being told I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table. And now, finally, recognition. Paraphrased, after 15 years of seeing my work claimed by others and being told I should be thankful just to be included. Now, finally, I am being recognized. Original. My new executive assistant appeared at the door. Dr. Jennings, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room. Paraphrased, my new executive assistant showed up at my door. Dr. Jennings, the development team is waiting for you in the main conference room. Original. And she hesitated. TechVantage's CEO has called 4 times in the last hour. Paraphrased, she paused before adding, and ... The CEO of TechVantage has called 4 times in the past hour. Original. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day. I replied calmly. Paraphrased, calmly I responded, please tell him that I am in meetings all day. Original. I'll have our legal team reach out to discuss licensing options later this week. Paraphrased, I will have our legal department contact him later this week to discuss licensing possibilities. Original. As I walked toward my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed with another update from Miguel. Paraphrased, as I headed to my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, My phone vibrated with another message from Miguel. Original. Board just called emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. P.S. My team and I accept your offer. When can we start? Paraphrased. The board just called an emergency meeting. Victor seems like he's about to lose his mind. P.S. My team and I are accepting your offer. When can we begin? Original. By Tuesday morning. The full impact of my departure had become clear to everyone at TechVantage. Paraphrased. By the morning of Tuesday, everyone at TechVantage had fully understood the consequences of my leaving. Original. Their flagship product, AccountSphere, relied entirely on my algorithm to process the massive datasets that gave it an edge over competitors. Paraphrased. AccountSphere, their main product, depended entirely on my algorithm to handle the huge amounts of data that made it superior to other products. Original. Without licensing rights to my patent, they faced two equally unpalatable options: negotiate with Precision Systems or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and millions in development costs. Paraphrased. Since they did not have the rights to my patent, they had two equally bad choices. They could either make a deal with Precision Systems or completely rebuild their core technology from the ground up, which would cost millions and take years to complete. Original. Victor has called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. Miguel texted. Paraphrased. Miguel texted. Victor had scheduled a company-wide meeting for 2 p.m. Original. It was his last day at TechVantage. He and the rest of my former team would be starting at Precision Systems next Monday. Paraphrased. This was his final day at TechVantage. He and the other members of my old team were set to start at Precision Systems the following Monday. Original. Rumor is they're going to try to sue you. Paraphrased. I'm hearing they are planning to sue you. Original. I forwarded his message to our legal department, who responded almost immediately. Paraphrased. I sent his message to our legal department, and they replied almost instantly. Original. Let them try. Your documentation is impeccable. Development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage ... all clearly established. We've prepared for this scenario. Paraphrased. Let them make an attempt. Your records are flawless. The development logs, timestamps, and use of personal equipment are all clearly documented. We were ready for this. Original. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role with remarkable ease. Paraphrased. In the meantime, I was finding my new role to be surprisingly easy. Original. The respect I received at Precision Systems was a stark contrast to my final years at TechVantage. When I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. Paraphrased. The respect I was shown at Precision Systems was completely different from my last years at TechVantage, where when I spoke in meetings, people truly listened. Original. My ideas weren't repackaged by male colleagues and presented as their own. My age and experience were viewed as assets rather than liabilities. Paraphrased. My male coworkers didn't take my ideas and claim them as their own. My age and experience were seen as advantages, not disadvantages. Original. The engineering team is implementing your efficiency improvements, Greg informed me during our afternoon briefing. Paraphrased. During our afternoon briefing, Greg told me the engineering team is currently implementing the efficiency improvements you made. Original. Early testing shows a 51% performance boost, even better than we projected. Paraphrased. Early tests are showing a 51% increase in performance, which is even higher than we had predicted. Original. I had several refinements I never shared with TechVantage. I admitted. Paraphrased. I confessed. I had a number of improvements that I never told TechVantage about. Original. After I discovered they were planning to eliminate my position, I saw no reason to give them my best work. Paraphrased. Once I found out they intended to get rid of my job, I didn't see the point in giving them my best work. Original. Their loss, our gain, Greg replied with a satisfied smile. Paraphrased. Greg replied with a pleased smile. Their loss is our gain. Original. Speaking of which, the first licensing inquiry came in this morning. Not from TechVantage yet, they're still in denial, but from Dataflow Systems. There. Worried about being caught in the crossfire. Paraphrased. And speaking of that, we received our first request for a license this morning. It wasn't from TechVantage yet, they're still refusing to accept it, but from Dataflow Systems, who are concerned about being in the middle of this dispute. Original. At 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent a detailed account of Victor's all-hands meeting. Paraphrased. At 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent me a thorough summary of Victor's company-wide meeting. Original. The CEO had tried to project confidence, assuring the staff that TechVantage would vigorously defend our proprietary technology. But the anxiety in the room had been palpable. Paraphrased. The CEO attempted to appear confident, telling the employees that TechVantage would forcefully protect our proprietary technology. But the nervousness in the room was clear. Original. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Paraphrased. A number of employees, feeling the company's weakness, had already changed their LinkedIn profiles. Original. Marjorie looked like she was about to faint when someone asked directly if they'd failed to secure the patent. Miguel reported. Victor cut the question period short after that. Paraphrased. Marjorie looked like she was going to pass out when a person asked directly if they had failed to get the patent. Miguel messaged. After that, Victor ended the Q&A session quickly. Original. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. Paraphrased. By Wednesday, the consequences in the industry had become more severe. Original. Two major clients had contacted Precision Systems about switching from AccountSphere. Concerned about TechVantage's ability to maintain the product without the algorithm's creator. Paraphrased. Two of their biggest clients had reached out to Precision Systems about moving away from AccountSphere, worried about whether TechVantage could keep the product working without the person who created the algorithm. Original. Our stock had risen another 8% while TechVantage's continued its decline. Paraphrased. Our stock had gone up another 8%. While TechVantage's continued to drop. Original. I received a call from Denise in HR, the same woman who had slid my severance package across the table just days earlier. Paraphrased. I got a call from Denise in HR, the same woman who had pushed my severance folder across the table. To me only a few days before. Original. Kira, she began, her voice carefully professional. I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights. Paraphrased. She started, her voice sounding carefully professional. Kira, I'm calling to talk about the situation with your patent. We think there might have been a misunderstanding about who owns it. Original. I don't think there's any misunderstanding. I replied calmly. My employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property, developed on my own time, using my own resources, remains mine. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Paraphrased. I calmly answered, I don't believe there is any misunderstanding. My employment contract clearly says that intellectual property I developed on my own time, using my own resources, belongs to me. The patent paperwork proves this completely. Original. Victor was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options. Paraphrased. Victor was hoping you would think about coming in to talk about some options. Original. Any discussions would need to go through Precision Systems' legal department now? I responded. Paraphrased. I replied. Any talks would have to happen through the legal department at Precision Systems now. Original. I'm sure they'd be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms. Paraphrased. I'm sure they would be glad to schedule a meeting to talk about a licensing agreement. Original. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Paraphrased. The quiet on the phone said a lot. Original. Finally, Denise sighed. I'll pass that along. Paraphrased. Denise finally sighed and said, I will relay that information. Original. That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to Precision Systems Board of Directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my algorithm at its center. Paraphrased. Later that afternoon, I led my first official presentation to the Board of Directors at Precision Systems, showing them our technology plan with my algorithm as the main focus. Original. As I stood confidently at the head of the table not hidden in the back as I had been at TechVantage. I caught Greg's approving nod. Paraphrased, as I stood confidently at the front of the table, not tucked away in the back as I used to be at TechVantage. I noticed Greg give me a look of approval. Original. By Friday, just 1 week after I had walked out of TechVantage. For the last time, the company had entered full crisis mode. Paraphrased, by Friday, only 1 week after I had left TechVantage forever, the company was in a complete crisis. Original. Their stock had fallen 23% from Monday's opening bell, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Paraphrased, their stock had dropped 23% since the market opened on Monday, which led to worried phone calls from big investors. Original. Industry analysts were publishing speculative pieces with titles like "Can TechVantage survive the algorithm crisis?" and "How one strategic blunder may cost a tech giant everything." Paraphrased, industry experts were writing articles with titles like "Will TechVantage make it through the algorithm crisis?" and "How a single strategic mistake could ruin a tech giant." Original. Through my industry contacts, I learned that Victor had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. Paraphrased, I found out from my contacts in the industry that Victor had finally admitted to the board how serious the situation was. Original. TechVantage would need to either license my algorithm from Precision Systems, likely at exorbitant rates that would devastate their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of AccountSphere without using any technology covered by my patent. Paraphrased, TechVantage would have to either license my algorithm from Precision Systems, probably at extremely high prices that would ruin their profits, or completely recreate AccountSphere without using any of the technology in my patent. Original. They've started interviewing for a new development team, Miguel informed me during our Friday video call, where we discussed his upcoming transition to Precision Systems. Paraphrased, during our video call on Friday, where we talked about his move to Precision Systems, Miguel told me they have started interviewing for a new development team. Original. Victor's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. Paraphrased, Victor is saying they can duplicate the functionality in 6 months. Original. I couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm took me 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. Paraphrased, I couldn't stop myself from laughing. It had taken me 3 years to perfect the original algorithm, and that was with my detailed understanding of the subject. Original. Exactly, Miguel agreed. Nobody's believing the timeline, especially after your team posted their resignation letters simultaneously. The knowledge drain is massive. Paraphrased, Miguel agreed. That's right. No one believes that timeline, especially since your entire team quit at the same time. They have lost a huge amount of knowledge. Original. That afternoon, TechVantage's attorneys finally reached out to Precision Systems to open a dialogue about potential licensing arrangements. Paraphrased, later that afternoon, the lawyers for TechVantage finally contacted Precision Systems to begin discussions about a possible licensing agreement. Original. Our legal team, following the strategy we had developed, responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful, 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement of my role as the technology inventor. Paraphrased, our legal team, sticking to the plan we had made, replied with terms that were technically reasonable but strategically harsh, a licensing fee that was 3 times the industry standard, along with a public admission that I was the inventor of the technology. Original. They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost, Greg predicted as we reviewed the response in his office. Victor's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology. Paraphrased, as we went over the response in his office, Greg predicted they will refuse to agree to the acknowledgement more than the price. Victor's pride will not let him admit that he fired the person who created their most important technology. Original. Then they'll have to rebuild. I replied. Paraphrased, I replied, then they will have to start over. Original. And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market. Paraphrased, And every day they spend trying to copy what I did is another day that we increase our lead in the market. Original. The following Monday. Morning. 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led the first meeting with my newly assembled innovation team, which included Miguel and the other 5 engineers from TechVantage. Paraphrased, the next Monday morning, 10 days after I was unceremoniously fired, I was in charge of the first meeting with my new innovation team, which included Miguel and the other 5 engineers from TechVantage. Original, the Energy In. The room was electric as we mapped out the next evolution of my algorithm. Paraphrased, the room was buzzing with energy as we planned the next version of my algorithm. Original, this is how development meetings should be, commented Anita, one of my former team members at TechVantage. Paraphrased, Anita, one of my old team members from TechVantage, said, this is how development meetings are supposed to be. Original, we spent half our time explaining basic concepts to executives who wouldn't listen anyway. Paraphrased, we used to spend half our time explaining simple ideas to executives who never listened anyway. Original, that's the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable. I replied. Paraphrased, I responded, that is the difference between being valued and being considered expendable. Original, here, your expertise is recognized. Paraphrased, here, your knowledge is appreciated. Original, as we wrapped up the productive session, my assistant appeared at the door. Paraphrased, as we finished the productive meeting, my assistant came to the door. Original, Dr. Jennings, there's been a significant development with TechVantage. Their board just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson is stepping down, effective immediately. Paraphrased, Dr. Jennings, something major has happened with TechVantage. Their board just announced an emergency change in leadership. Victor Lawson is resigning, effective immediately. Original. The news spread quickly. Paraphrased, the information spread fast. Original. Within hours, industry publications were reporting that TechVantage's board had lost confidence in Victor's leadership following the patent oversight that threatened the company's flagship product. Paraphrased, within a few hours, industry publications were reporting that the board at TechVantage no longer had faith in Victor's leadership because of the patent mistake that had put the company's main product at risk. Original. Marjorie Thompson was also out, along with the head of legal who had failed to properly secure the patent. Paraphrased, Marjorie Thompson was also gone, as was the head of the legal department who had failed to correctly secure the patent. Original. That evening, I received an unexpected email from Richard Donovan, TechVantage's newly appointed interim CEO. Paraphrased, that night, I got an email from Richard Donovan, the person who had just been named the temporary CEO of TechVantage. Original. Unlike Victor's desperate message from the previous week, this one was straightforward and respectful. Paraphrased, this email was direct and respectful, unlike Victor's panicked message from the week before. Original, Dr. Jennings. Congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help TechVantage navigate the current situation. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We're prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for the oversights of previous management. Would you be available to meet next week? Paraphrased, Dr. Jennings, congratulations on your new role. I have been hired to help TechVantage deal with the current situation. I would like to talk about a fair licensing agreement for your patented technology. We are ready to publicly admit your contributions and make amends for the mistakes of the previous management. Are you free to meet next week? Original. I forwarded the email to Greg, adding a simple note, Phase 1 complete. Paraphrased, I sent the email to Greg, along with a short note that said, Phase 1 is done. Original. His reply came quickly. Beautifully executed. The board is celebrating your first major victory for Precision Systems. Looks like TechVantage is finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and innovators. Paraphrased, his reply was immediate, perfectly executed. The board is celebrating your first big win for Precision Systems. It seems TechVantage is finally learning a costly lesson about the importance of innovation and the people who innovate. Original. 3 months after my departure from TechVantage, I sat on the stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. Paraphrased, 3 months after leaving TechVantage, I was on the stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, getting ready to give the main speech. Original. The audience was filled with industry leaders, technology journalists, and aspiring developers, many of whom now knew my story. Paraphrased, the audience was full of industry leaders, tech reporters, and new developers, and many of them already knew my story. Original. And now I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, the conference organizer announced, Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling across multiple industries. Paraphrased, the conference host announced, I'm now happy to introduce our main speaker, Dr. Kira Jennings, the Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and the person who created the distributed processing algorithm that has completely changed how data is managed in many industries. Original. The applause was substantial as I approached the podium. Paraphrased, the applause was loud as I walked to the podium. Original. What a difference a few months could make. Paraphrased, it was amazing how much could change in just a few months. Original. Last year, I had attended this same conference as part of the TechVantage delegation, seated in the back while Victor gave a presentation about his company's innovations. Paraphrased, the year before, I had been at the same conference as part of the TechVantage group, sitting in the back while Victor spoke about the company's new ideas. Original. Thank you, I began, surveying the attentive faces. Paraphrased, looking out at the focused faces, I started. Thank you. Original. Today I want to talk about innovation, ownership, and the importance of properly valuing intellectual contributions, regardless of where they come from. Paraphrased, today I would like to discuss innovation, ownership, and why it's so important to properly value intellectual contributions, no matter where they come from. Original. My presentation detailed the technical aspects of my algorithm but also touched on the broader issues of recognition and respect in the technology sector. Paraphrased, my talk covered the technical parts of my algorithm but also addressed the larger issues of getting recognition and respect in the tech industry. Original. Without directly mentioning TechVantage, I emphasized the importance of companies protecting their innovators rather than seeing them as replaceable resources. Paraphrased, without naming TechVantage, I stressed that companies should protect their innovators instead of treating them like expendable assets. Original. Afterward, during the reception, several young women engineers approached me seeking advice and mentorship. Paraphrased, after the talk, at the reception, several young female engineers came up to me to ask for advice and mentorship. Original. One of them, barely 30, confided, your story changed how I document my work. I started keeping detailed logs of my development process on personal time. Paraphrased, one of them, who looked to be in her late 20s, shared, your story made me change how I document my work. I started keeping detailed records of my development process on my own time. Original. Smart, I replied. Your innovations deserve protection. Paraphrased, I said, that's smart. Your new ideas deserve to be protected. Original. As the evening concluded, I checked my phone to find an industry news alert. Paraphrased, at the end of the night, I looked at my phone and saw a news alert from the industry. Original. TechVantage had finally announced the licensing agreement with Precision Systems, acknowledging me by name as the algorithm's creator. Paraphrased, TechVantage had finally announced their licensing deal with Precision Systems, and they had mentioned me by name as the person who created the algorithm. Original. Their stock had stabilized, though at a significantly lower valuation than before my departure. Paraphrased, their stock price had leveled off, but it was at a much lower value than it had been before I left. Original. 1 year to the day after being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Precision Systems, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Paraphrased, exactly 1 year after I was told to clear my desk, I was sitting in my large office at Precision Systems, looking over the quarterly innovation report. Original, under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products built on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from TechVantage and other competitors. Paraphrased, with me as the leader, the company had launched 3 new products based on my algorithm, which had taken a large portion of the market from TechVantage and other competitors. Original, a knock at my door interrupted my analysis. Paraphrased, a knock on my door stopped me from looking at the report. Original, it was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Paraphrased, it was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Original, happy anniversary, he said, setting the glasses on my desk. Paraphrased, he said, happy anniversary, and placed the glasses on my desk. Original, the board asked me to share the news with you personally before the public announcement. Precision Systems has officially surpassed TechVantage in market valuation for the first time in company history. Paraphrased, the board wanted me to tell you this news personally before it's made public. Precision Systems has now officially become more valuable than TechVantage for the first time ever. Original, I smiled, feeling not triumph but a quiet satisfaction. Paraphrased, I smiled, feeling a quiet contentment instead of a sense of victory. Original, that's what happens when you value innovation properly. Paraphrased, that is what happens when you give innovation the respect it deserves. Original, as Greg poured the champagne, my assistant delivered a sleek envelope. Paraphrased, while Greg was pouring the champagne, my assistant handed me a clean-looking envelope. Original, inside was an invitation to speak at Women in Technology's annual Leadership Summit. Paraphrased, inside was an invitation to speak at the yearly Leadership Summit for Women in Technology. Original, the topic, owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. Paraphrased, the topic was claiming your intellectual value, how proper documentation altered an industry. Original, you've become something of an icon, you know, Greg commented, noticing the invitation. Paraphrased, Greg, seeing the invitation, commented, you've kind of become a legend, you know. Original, the story about the executive who didn't recognize what she had until it was gone has become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms. Paraphrased, the story of the executive who didn't appreciate what she had until it was gone has become a warning story in company boardrooms. Original, Richard Donovan, who had remained as TechVantage's CEO after the crisis, had implemented sweeping changes in how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. Paraphrased, Richard Donovan, who had stayed on as TechVantage's CEO after the crisis, had put in place significant changes in how the company acknowledged and rewarded innovation. Original, their new policies on intellectual property protection and inventor recognition were reportedly modeled after the program I had established at Precision Systems. Paraphrased, their new rules for protecting intellectual property and recognizing inventors were, according to reports, based on the program I had created at Precision Systems. Original, it was never about revenge, I said, raising my glass in a toast. Paraphrased, I raised my glass in a toast and said, it was never about getting revenge. Original, it was about recognition, about showing the industry that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from real people who deserve real credit. Paraphrased, it was about being recognized, about proving to the industry that new ideas don't just appear out of nowhere. They come from real people who should get the credit they deserve. Original, to proper recognition, Greg agreed, clinking his glass against mine. Paraphrased, Greg agreed to proper recognition as he clinked his glass against mine. Original, as the afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, I reflected on my journey. Paraphrased, as the afternoon sun shone through my office windows, I thought about my career path. Original, at 56, I had finally found what had eluded me throughout my career. Not just success, but acknowledgement. Paraphrased, at 56, I had at last found what had always escaped me during my career. Not just success, but being recognized. Original, my name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed an industry exactly where it belonged. Paraphrased, my name was now forever linked to the algorithm that had transformed an entire industry right where it was meant to be.